Today, we're exploring the absolutely fascinating intersections and the stark divergences hidden deep within world mythologies. We so often think of myths as just these old, dusty fairy tales, but today, we're going to look at them as something much more profound. Think of mythology as a mirror, one that actually reflects the very architecture of the human mind. So get ready because we're going to travel from the sun drenched peaks of Mount Olympus all the way to the icy realms of the Norse gods and even across the oceans to the ancient Americas and China. So we're starting off with a really profound mystery. Think about this for a second. How on earth did totally disconnected ancient cultures, from Greece to China to pre-Columbian North America, dream up the exact same foundational tales? I mean, long before the internet, way before global trade routes, literally before humans could safely cross vast oceans, civilizations that had absolutely zero contact with one another were crafting narratives with eerie, mind-bending similarities. We are talking about identical fears, identical heroes, and identical creation stories. How is that even possible? Well, to figure this out, we actually need to look through the lens of the renowned thinker Roland Barthes. He argued that myth isn't just old folklore. Instead, it's a unique type of speech, a whole symbolic language. The crucial takeaway here is that we really need to stop looking at these stories as botched, primitive attempts to record literal history. Actually, they are an early, highly sophisticated system designed to process psychological, existential, and spiritual truths. When an ancient culture encountered something totally terrifying and inexplicable, like a massive thunderstorm or a sudden famine, they didn't just write down the facts. They translated the event into this mythological language to make it digestible, to make it make sense. Section 1. Echoes in the Dark, the Primordial Abyss and the Deluge. Let's look at how this concept builds our first truly eerie similarity across impossible distances, the shared human fear of the primeval unknown. Because, interestingly enough, before there was light, before there was earth, humanity globally agreed on one thing. There was only a terrifying darkness. This brilliantly illustrates how both the ancient Greeks and the Chinese independently envisioned the universe springing into existence from a dark, terrifying, formless void. For example, we have the Greek concept of chaos, which our sources describe as this vast, immeasurable, dark abyss, just a shapeless nothingness brooded over by unbroken darkness. And then we have Chinese mythology giving us Panku, where the universe begins as a dark, formless egg before the deity breaks free and literally chisels order right out of the dark. Separated by thousands of miles, both cultures looked back to the dawn of time and saw the exact same pitch-black, watery chaos. Our second mind-blowing parallel? The Great Deluge. Now, I know almost everyone has heard some version of a flood myth, but it's the specific sequence of events here that's absolutely wild. The exact sequence of a world's-ending flood, followed by humanity being remolded from clay, appears in both Chinese lore and the myth of the Muscogee deity Esagedda over in North America. In the Muscogee tradition, water destroys the earth, Esagedda intervenes to direct the waters, and then literally molds the first men out of soft mud, placing them on a great wall to dry. We see this exact same sequence, destruction by water, divine intervention, and humanity shaped from the mud of the earth, echoed across the globe. It represents a totally universal human anxiety about the overwhelming, destructive power of nature, mixed with our fragile, earthy origins. The universal trickster, mischief across oceans. This brings us to a third undeniable similarity, a figure that literally pops up everywhere, the mischievous trickster archetype. Because, humanity didn't just fear the dark and the rain. They also had to make sense of the chaotic, unpredictable, and sometimes downright unfair nature of daily life. The trickster's universal presence is truly undeniable. We have the Greek Prometheus, right? He rebels against the gods to steal fire for humanity. Then we have this fascinating linguistic and behavioral parallel between the Algonquian trickster Lamech and the Norse god Loki. Both are mischievous, restless spirits causing endless trouble. And then we have the Chinook, blue jay, and coyote, who were described as the braggarts and clowns of the gods, constantly scheming and getting into messes. These cultures independently realized that the world just isn't perfectly orderly. They needed a symbol for the chaotic, rule-breaking forces of the universe. And boom, the trickster was born in every corner of the globe. Immortals versus the doomed. The divergence. Okay, so just as we might assume all human storytelling is completely identical, we hit a jarring turn, a profound divergence in how these cultures viewed the ultimate destiny of their gods. While similarities show us our shared humanity, the divergences show us how incredibly adaptable the human mind really is. We can really see this when we contrast the joyful, immortal Olympians of Greece with the grave Norse gods. The Greek gods were considered the happy, deathless gods. They lived up on Mount Olympus, feasting on nectar and ambrosia, totally removed from the threat of real, permanent death. But then, look at the Norse gods of Asgard. Their entire universe is completely doomed to crash down in defeat. They exist under the constant, heavy shadow of Ragnarok, a prophesied final battle where the forces of evil and brute nature will actually win, and the gods will die. So you have to ask, why would one culture invent gods that live forever in joy, while another invents gods who are destined to be slaughtered? Well, our source texts explain that these differences absolutely aren't random. Basically, myths functioned as early environmental science. The bright warmth and predictable sunny climate of Greece literally forged a religious outlook of beauty, joy, and immortality. The world wasn't actively trying to kill the Greeks every single winter. But the Norsemen, they lived in a brutal, unforgiving landscape. The harsh, icy winters of the north meant that survival was a constant, heroic struggle against the brute forces of nature. Their environment taught them that eventually the winter, the dark, and the cold will win. Their myths perfectly adapted to this, teaching them that true heroism isn't about winning at all. It's about fighting bravely even when you know you are totally doomed. The psychology of myth. Why we tell stories. This leads us to the ultimate question for our explainer today. Which is more important for what it tells us about humanity, the similarities or the divergences? If myths are the ancient operating systems of the human mind, which part of the code actually matters most? Well, the crucial point is that both are incredibly vital. Think of it kind of like a computer. The similarities map out our shared human hardware. No matter where we are born on the planet, we all share the exact same deepest fears. The fear of the dark unknown, the overwhelming power of nature, and of course our own mortality. But the divergences? Those showcase our adaptive cultural software. How we deal with those fears depends entirely on our local environment. The Greeks adapted with stories of beauty and immortal joy to match their landscape, while the Norse adapted with stories of grim, defiant courage to survive their winters. You simply cannot understand the human mind without looking at both. The true meaning of myth, a semiological system. Let's pull all of this together by returning to Roland Barthes' synthesis on the mechanics of this mythological language. We've seen the hardware, we've seen the software, but how exactly does the program run? Barthes reveals that mythology's true purpose isn't to record history. Instead, it transforms the terrifying, chaotic human experience into something that feels perfectly natural and understandable. Think about it. When the ancient Greeks heard a massive clap of thunder, it wasn't a random, terrifying fluctuation in atmospheric pressure. It was just Zeus, acting like a grumpy human being. Myth takes the terrifying chaos of reality and dresses it up in a narrative that makes it feel familiar, justified, and safe. It literally gives us a way to sleep at night. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. If ancient myths were just symbolic expressions of their environments, helping those people process their unique fears and landscapes, what do the stories we obsess over today say about us? What are the overarching narratives, the modern myths we consume on our screens every single day? And maybe more importantly, what terrifying modern chaos are they trying to naturalize for us? Keep questioning the stories around you, and I'll catch you in the next one.